Hi, friends. I hope you're all doing well. This is the first full week of collages I've created every day. If you haven't watched last week's video, I'll link it in the description area. I go over my plan for this monthly exercise. In addition to the 3 items outlined in my plan, I want to experiment with different shapes that are new or rarely used in my art. Also, I plan to combine these shapes in different designs that I haven't previously explored. For this collage, I'm using the L composition, but expanding upon it. I don't want the final collage to have an obvious L-shaped design. To achieve this, I'm playing with proportion and overlapping some elements on top of the main L shape. This is my main focus for this collage, but I'm still being mindful of negative space and having strong light and dark values. Going forward, the collaging sections will have a mix of narration and music. Here's the finished collage. The L composition isn't too obvious, but if I had a bit more time, I could have added a few more smaller elements. I'm happy with the different proportions of these elements. It's a good starting point for a larger collage. Here's the grayscale version. It has strong light and dark values. Also, there's enough negative space. I'm starting by pulling scraps that were already cut into geometric shapes from this envelope. It was a good way to jumpstart the design of this next collage. I encourage you to save your scraps, especially if they're different shapes as well as sizes. If you're not feeling especially inspired, one or more of these scraps can help guide you to the design of the collage. It took quite a few passes with scissors to get the cutout into a pleasing shape. Next time, I should have used scissors that are either smaller or thinner blades. It would have made it easier to cut inside that shape. If you have access to security envelopes, I suggest that you keep the ones with interesting patterns for your paper stash. The one that I'm auditioning now can be used for the dark value element. I decided to use a smaller security envelope scrap due to its size. A smaller piece is needed for this area. I would rather not cut up a larger scrap of security envelope if I have a smaller piece. These types of ephemera are scarce since a lot of documents are sent electronically, not through the mail. If I'm gluing down an element that is small or thin, instead of using a smoothing tool, I prefer to use a shop towel. I'm less likely to move or tear the element. I decided that the blue paper would not provide enough contrast between the dark green and the dark purple elements. The light aqua scrap is a better choice in this area. It provides a light value and contrast. I like the overlapping geometric design. The last edition of the small blue curve shaped helped with having different proportions. The other elements were similar in weight. Here's the grayscale version so you can see the different values. I decided to pull light and dark value papers from my stash of larger papers. The options in my leftover scrap stack was getting sparse. I'm still keeping out those scraps, but I moved them so it's easier to access the larger papers. Yesterday's collage inspired the design of this collage. I wanted to use another element that had a cutout, but in a different shape. I don't have anything else to say at this point, so I'll add music and come back once the collage is finished. I like that the design has straight edge and curved shapes. It creates movement. It helps to guide the viewer eyes around the collage. This grayscale version shows that all three values are balanced, which isn't part of my initial plan. I wanted to work on strong light and dark values with a minimal amount of mid-tone values. I do like the design, so I'm okay with the values being balanced. For this next collage, I fell back into my typical style, and that's okay. When doing daily exercises that have some restrictions like this one, it's okay to fall back into your comfort zone. It's only day 7, so I wasn't too far into the practice. Sometimes you just have to create within your comfort zone to get a collage done for the day. Also, I had this horizontal design idea that I wanted to try. I started by creating the ground or first layer by covering it completely with 2 dark value papers. Instead of having the edge where both papers meet be horizontal, I wanted to see what it would look like if that area was diagonal. This will be the guide for the other papers that will be placed along that edge. I applied the adhesive on the substrate and papers because the papers were heavy. I wanted to make sure the papers were secured in place. You probably notice in past collage sessions and in this one, I sometimes trim off the excess paper before the collage is finished. I do this step so I have a good idea where the finished edges are located. This helps me with placing the next set of papers, and sometimes I do it to stall when I don't know what my next move will be. In this case, I trimmed the excess papers just so I could see the finished edges. The papers that will be placed along the edge where the dark papers meet will be mostly light value. I'll add music at this point and come back when it's finished. I like the design of this collage. I would consider it to be a diagonal composition more than a horizontal one that I mentioned at the beginning. I like how some of the dark pattern papers are showing in between the light and mid-tone value papers, so it doesn't have a strong foreground background look. The grayscale version is like the original. It shows a strong light and dark value design. These are painted deli papers. They're easy to make and provide a transparent layer. I find that simple shapes and patterns work best in my art, but you certainly can paint multiple shapes and colors on each deli paper. I chose this one because of the initial shape of the scrap. As you can see, I trimmed off a bit and fine-tuned the shape before gluing it down. I only wanted a section to be included in this collage. I find that applying the gloss or matte medium on the substrate first, then place the deli paper, then apply another layer of the medium on top helps to secure it in place. At this point, you can use the brush to smooth out any wrinkles. You may not be able to smooth out all the wrinkles, but at least flatten them. For this collage, I decided to work on light and dark values. I'm giving myself some leeway at this point of this daily practice not to include all three of the items I wanted to work on. I'm still being mindful of proportions, but negative space isn't being considered. This design covers the whole substrate, again falling back into my typical style. Also, I wanted to tear the edges of the paper instead of cutting. I really love this design style. I'll add music at this point and come back when it's finished. This collage has various sizes, but there isn't a large difference between the elements. There are small elements, which are the yellow paper in the upper left and the dark teal in the lower right. The large elements are the painted deli paper and the burgundy pattern paper. The other elements I would consider mid-size. Here's the grayscale version so you can see the light and dark values. I don't consider any of the elements as mid-tone. What do you think? This is the last collage for this week. I'm using security envelopes again, but this time I'm covering the whole substrate. It'll be the negative space and light value for this collage. I'm trimming the excess paper so I know where the finished edges are located. When the whole substrate is covered like this, I like to go over it with a smoothing tool to make sure every section of the paper is secure to the substrate. The inspiration for the design is this collage that I created during the same daily practice back in June. I've been interested in exploring this shape further in my art practice. I call it abstract people. I haven't shown any of my sketches of these shapes here on YouTube, but I posted 2 reels on Instagram. I'll include both videos here so you can see them. I'm lightly gluing the 2 papers together so it'll be easy to cut the whole shape that I want. I was fortunate that there was a circle already drawn on the back of this green scrap. I'm using it as a guide to cut the top section. I'm deciding on the placement of both papers, then I'm using washi tape to hold both in place while I cut out the shape. Now that the main elements are glued in place, I'm adding 2 small dark value accent papers. Here's the finished abstract person collage. I'm happy with the way it turned out. The grayscale version shows that it has strong light and dark value elements. I hope you enjoyed watching the process of creating this week's daily collages. Let me know if you have any questions. See you next week. Take care.